This is the last weekend of conference play for most teams, and it was full of great matchups and surprises. The first one being number 22 LSU at number 17 Vanderbilt, which happened to end up being a sweep for LSU. Right after they were swept last week by Ole Miss, they turned things around and take those games in dominant fashion pretty much.
Yeah, and with this series loss for Vandy, it looks like they probably drop out of the hosting race at this point. It looked like Vandy was hot, picked up a couple series wins, but now they get swept. I mean, it's not ideal to give up 42 runs in a weekend, especially at home. And now, with how bad Georgia's been playing recently, that series win doesn't look as impressive anymore. So the Vandy resume just isn't great at this point, below 500 in SEC play. And then on the other hand, you have LSU just consistently inconsistent. We've said it the entire year. Anytime they lose a series, they're going to bounce back. I think we said in our last podcast that they would probably sweep this weekend, and this is what they did. And with this series win, with the sweep, they climb into the top four in the SEC and earn a bye for the tournament. Huge for them. Yeah, just impressive weekend from them, bouncing back as always.
Yeah, I do recall us calling out that LSU sweep potentially happening, maybe as a joke, but you never know with that team, and it ended up being true. So LSU, they're kind of in a spot to host if they can do all right in the conference tournament, and Vandy's now on the outside looking in for that kind of stuff. So they would really need to put a good run together to be in that conversation. But after that, another interesting surprise in the SEC was number 7 Arkansas going to Alabama and losing the series to them. So this is the second straight week that Arkansas has lost a series, and so it's really not a good sign for them, especially because it just hasn't seemed like they've gotten everything clicking the entire year, and the clock is really running out at this point.
Yeah, it seems like it's been 2 or 3 weeks now of us just saying Arkansas needs to figure it out, needs to reach their full potential and start firing on all cylinders, but they just haven't been able to do it. And they only have one more weekend to build some confidence heading into the postseason. So we'll see what they're able to do in this conference tourney. I think we both believe they're one of the best teams in the SEC, but they really haven't shown their true potential up until this point. As for Alabama, it's a huge series win for them to get them back on the fringe of potentially getting a bid into the postseason. And they actually match up with Georgia in the first round of the SEC tourney, and Georgia hasn't been playing well recently. If they're able to pick off that win, they match up again with Arkansas for a little rematch of this past weekend.
Yeah, they have to be feeling pretty good about themselves going into the tournament. It's a definitely winnable first game, and then going against Arkansas is another game that they could definitely pull out of there and do well and make a regional. So we can now jump to another just surprising series with number 23 Oklahoma at number 5 Texas Tech. Right as you think Texas Tech is getting hot and they're in a spot to potentially be a top 8 seed, definitely a host. Oklahoma comes to town and takes the series and almost is able to sweep them. If they were able to sweep, they would get a share of the title. Unfortunately, they just fell short on the final day, but Oklahoma has now put together a decent run, and Texas Tech is another team that has the potential to be really good but has been inconsistent at times.
Yeah, this was an interesting weekend matchup here as both teams, depending on their performance, had a shot at potentially claiming the Big 12 title. And Oklahoma won those first two, but sadly weren't able to cling on to that last game. But at this point, Oklahoma is one of the hottest teams in the Big 12. They've been playing very well as of late. And then for Texas Tech, we thought they were back after that series win against Oklahoma State. They dropped this series. Wasn't necessarily a huge surprise, but at the same time, this seems like a winnable series coming off of that win against Oklahoma State. So there's not much separation in the Big 12 at this point between all the teams. So this tournament should be very interesting, and we'll be discussing that later in the episode.
Yeah, the top 5 teams in the conference really seem to just be a jumble right now, and seems like any of those teams can be the best one week and then just be at the bottom of the pile the next. So it's should definitely be a crazy tournament, or hopefully it plays out that way for them. But another upset series this past weekend was number 21 UCLA going to number 3 Oregon State and winning the first two games. Also just fell short of the sweep like Oklahoma, but very surprising to see Oregon State struggle these past few weeks the way that they have. And UCLA really needed to boost their RPI, and they did just that this past weekend.
Yeah, Oregon State falls for the second week in a row now. Not the right time to be trending down as a team, but overall it has been a pretty consistent year for the Beavers, so we still have a high outlook for them, but they really need to get back on track down in Phoenix for the Pac-12 tourney. On the other hand, UCLA puts together another impressive series win since falling to Washington on the road there. And UCLA ends up finishing third in the Pac-12, so impressive year for them. If their RPI wasn't down around 50, they'd probably be a surefire lock to host at this point, but they are trending in the right direction heading into the postseason, especially with Max Rozic pitching as well as he is right now. We know the importance of having a lockdown Friday guy heading into the postseason.
Yeah, UCLA has been able to find some consistency behind him, and their offense just does enough to get them through some games. But it is interesting to see how Oregon State will be able to come back from this. They'll have a tough matchup against University of Washington, who is one of the hottest teams in the Pac-12 right now. Even though their record overall isn't great, they've put together a very good run in the past few weeks. So it should be a great matchup in the first for one of the first games of the week. But after that, we can jump to number 14 Virginia at number 16 Louisville. Louisville does their job and takes the series. The only game that was relatively close was game one of the series. All the other ones, it just seemed like a blowout for one of the teams. But looking at now Virginia's entire resume, it doesn't seem all that impressive. It seems like they beat the teams that they should have beat, and they lost to the teams that maybe were a bit better than them. So nothing really jumps off the page as something that they should be like a host or something like that. They put themselves in a good place, but I think in the future they need to get some wins in their conference tournament.
Yeah, we knew this was a pivotal series coming into the weekend with both these teams ranked in the mid-teens in most polls. We thought that the series winner could be in contention to host a regional, and it looks like Louisville has taken that position. It started with Poland locking down the Friday night game, and their offense did enough on the Sunday game as well, scoring 11 runs. So their offense has been good late in series and could be a dangerous team late in the regionals, even if the pitching isn't there. And it looks like Louisville is in a very solid spot to host right now. Like you said, for Virginia, gonna need some performance in the conference tourney in order for us to have some confidence in them moving into the postseason. After that hot start they had to start the year, they've certainly died down a bit.
Yeah, and Louisville, like you said, has been pretty good, pretty consistent recently. Even though they lost to Virginia Tech last weekend, the series was very close, and seems like the edge for that series was just Virginia Tech being home. So they're definitely one of the top teams in the ACC and potentially the second best team right behind Virginia Tech. But going to another ACC series, we had number 8 Notre Dame at number 11 Miami. Miami does well. They come back from losing last weekend, wins the series, and they just did what they need to show that they're potentially a top 8 seed. And if they do well in the tourney, they can definitely prove that.
Yeah, similar implications in this series to the Virginia-Louisville one, except the stakes were just a little higher here, with both teams looking to propel themselves into the national seed conversation. And this was a big series win for Miami. They look like a potential lock to be a top 8 seed now at this point. And then similar story for Notre Dame as Virginia, on the outside looking in as far as hosting. And I believe they're in the same pool in the ACC tourney, so should be an interesting matchup there. Both teams looking to end the year on a hot note before heading into the postseason.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see how this ACC tournament pans out just because of the interesting format that they have. But Thank you for watching and listening. If you enjoyed, we would really appreciate a like and subscribe for more weekly college baseball content.